Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Pick up your morning.
Happy Mother's Day, Bobby.
Happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day to all the
Happy Mother's
moms.
Day.
Mhm.
Happy Mother's Day.
Welcome.
We're going to switch to Jennifer here very shortly. I wanted to say just a couple of things in preparation for that. Anyway, thank you everybody for joining. Chaz, it is great to see you again. Been a little while and just great to have you back with us.
Nice to be here. Nice to see everybody.
So Chaz is there in a window, and he comes to us actually from the generation that might save us all, Nick's generation, and
No pressure.
comes
no pressure.
through that.
Pressure.
Well, it's we're all excited for the task.
Yeah. So anyway, welcome back, Chaz. And for those of you that joined a little later, I just wanted to underscore, we had Anyo Ancheta from Yokoji Zen Mountain Center with us first thing this morning. Her former husband, Jutsudo Roshi, passed yesterday at 2:45 p.m. And not only did Anyo join us, but some of you may have missed, but she was sitting with Jutsudo in state. And so a little bit different. We started the morning with a dead monk on the screen.
I didn't see that.
And Jutsudo was a successor of Maizumi Roshi and one of the original planners and builders of Yokoji Zen Mountain Center. For those of you that have been up to Yokoji, I think we all know and love Anyo from maybe our first trip up there where she scared us in her position as monitor. Be quiet, be still.
She's about this tall.
Yeah, and then in more recent trips, after she took the vows of Tokido and delivered a Dharma talk on Seijo and her soul are separated, that I think brought all of us to tears. It was really such a beautiful talk.
It was great.
So it was our honor to start the morning and do service for Anyo and Jutsudo, and the offering came at the request of Yoshin Roshi last night. Came across the transom who shared the news. So I just wanted to underscore that, our place in the lineage, the great karmic connection, and remember, as we've said before, we're really just third generation, if I've got that right, Jennifer, American practitioners, coming out of Maizumi, establishing ZCLA here in Los Angeles. So an honor to play a role in that. I think that's about it. I did hit record this time, Jennifer. Your last talk, which everybody was in love with, and I had instant requests for, can you send it to us? I realized that I had screwed up and not hit record until about halfway through it. I don't know, maybe it's Dan's desire to be center stage, operating in the background, or just a screw up. But anyway, we are recording here already, so we will have Jennifer's full talk to put online and to share with others. That said, I just want to welcome Jennifer. I think most of you know her and you've been introduced to her before. She's been a long time part of Lori's and my practice, a huge support through all of the ups and downs. She is a fully ordained senior priest and teacher. She has a PhD in speech pathology and therapy, I believe. She just published her book, Taro the Zen Cat, and I don't know, I probably left out a few other accomplishments. Welcome, Jennifer. I'm going to pin you on the screen and let you go.
Okay. Okay, so good morning and welcome. Welcome. Thank you so much for having me be here. As I was looking at Jitsudo in state, it reminded me of an evening gata that we rarely chanted in Santa Monica, but we did it a lot down in San Diego. And I just want to say it because it's so, what's a good word for it? There's just something very organic about this particular gata. And the first part of it goes, evening as night darkens the green earth, the wheel turns. Death follows birth. And so thinking of birth, I also want to acknowledge all of our mothers, our grandmothers, women who were responsible for raising us and keeping us safe until we could keep our own selves safe. It's an honor and it's a privilege. Those of you who are mothers or grandmothers, just thank you, thank you, thank you. So today, what I thought I wanted to do was something kind of fun. And I wanted to tell you a story because it's an important story for me. It is not, I'm just gotta show you, it's not the story of Taro the Zen Cat, but it informed the story of Taro the Zen Cat. So, you know that there are fundamental questions that we ask ourselves from time to time. And sometimes these questions are the questions that move us onto a spiritual path. And one of the most ubiquitous questions is, who am I? Or it could be, why am I here? Or what is my purpose in life? What is my meaning in life? So that fundamental question, what is my purpose in life, became the skeleton upon which I built everything out from Taro the Zen Cat. And there was a backdrop, a particular backdrop that I had to have that kept me grounded until I didn't need it anymore. And that backdrop actually came out of a koan. And I wanted to share with you the backdrop of that koan because it is a wonderful story for those of you who may not know it. And it informs me in many ways, and I think is very relevant for today. So that backdrop that dripped as information was case number 40 from the Mumonkan. And it's not a difficult koan, it's a koan, it's kicking over the water jug. Okay, so what really popped for me, as I said, was this backstory. And I just wanted to share this because I think it can give each one of us access into that question if indeed we have that question ourselves. So the main case, I've truncated it. It's a fairly long koan, but I've truncated it. The main case says Pai Chang placed a water jug on the floor and said, "Don't call it a water jug." And Kuei Shan tipped it over. Okay, this is a truncated version, but it's fine for our purposes. So the koan begins in the late 700s in the south of China, and it takes up with the teachings of Kuei Shan, which is Chinese for the Japanese name Isshin. And Master Isshin, as those of you who may know, became a very famous Zen master over time. So he entered practice very early. He was ordained maybe at 14 or 15 years of age. And 9 years after his ordination, he went to Pai Chang's place and he started studying with Pai Chang. So it was said that Pai Chang, who by the way was Hakujo in Japanese, so those of you who are familiar with Hakujo's fox, that very famous koan of cause and effect, his Chinese name was Pai Chang. So it's said that even at the very beginning, Pai Chang recognized Kuei Shan. He recognized his potential. So the koan actually, the backstory actually opens up with one night Kuei Shan was sitting in a darkened zendo, and Pai Chang happened to walk by, and he saw somebody sitting in the zendo, and he said, "Who is that sitting in the dark? Who's sitting in the dark?" Well, if you're familiar with the language of koans, what you know is there's a literal side. Who is it? What's your name? Where are you from? Where you're going? But there's also another side that has extended subtleties, that has nothing to do with the actual literal question. So Pai Cheng says, "Who is that who's sitting in the dark?" And Kuei Shan says, "It's me, master." And Pai Cheng says, "Well, why don't you go to the pit and rake up some coals and get some warmth and some light into this room?" So Kuei Shan stands up, and he's young. I mean, he's in his early 20s. He stands up, he goes over to the fire pit, and he starts poking around, and he turns to Pai Cheng and he says, "The fire has gone out." So Pai Cheng walks up, he takes the tongs, and he pokes even deeper and deeper into the fire pit. And he finds this tiny little ember. And he picks it up with the tongs, and he brings it out, and he holds it in front of Kuei Shan, and he says, "So what's this?" And it's said that when Kuei Shan saw the ember, that it actually started to put to blaze his own internal ember. And he started working on the process of his own awakening at that time. And he continued for 25 years under the tutelage of Pai Cheng. So moving forward 20 some odd years, the actual koan takes place where Kuei Shan has now been elevated to the level of head cook or tenzo. And in a monastic setting, this is a very, very senior and a very important position. Back then, monks didn't have cars. They couldn't go to a market, much less have any money to buy anything. So a tenzo was literally put in a position of life and death. So one day, during this time, a friend of Pai Chang's happened to stop by. He was an itinerant monk, and he was a diviner or a geomancer. And this is a person who claims to be able to discover hidden knowledge with supernatural powers. And he says that he has found a most excellent mountain. And it's a place where he says a training center should take place. He said its orientation is propitious, its configuration perfect. So the itinerant monk suggested to Pai Cheng that he find somebody to found the mountain. And Pai Cheng thinks about it, and he goes, "Yeah, well, what about me?" And the geomancer says, "No, you're too little and ascetic. You would never do. This is a broad mountain, and it needs somebody large and vigorous." Well, just then, the head monk walked in. And Pai Cheng said, "Well, what about him?" And the geomancer looked at the head monk, and he said, "Cough." And the head monk coughed. And then he said, "Take a few steps." And the head monk walked around a little. And then he told the head monk to leave. And Pai Cheng said, "Well," and he goes, "Not qualified." So Pai Cheng goes, "Okay, so let's see." So then he calls Kuei Shan out of the kitchen. And it is said that the moment the diviner or the geomancer laid eyes on Kuei Shan, he said, "Here is the man for Mount Ta Kuei." So Pai Cheng said, "Okay, all right, I agree." And later on, he called his assembly together. There were, I don't know, hundreds of monks. he called them all together and he made the announcement. And when the head monk heard that he did not get this job on the mountain, he was livid and he was really angry. And he said, that is not fair. I'm the one who has been doing all this work with this assembly for so long. I deserve to go to this mountain. It should be my job. I should be the one. So you want to take a pause here and really pay attention to what this head monk is saying. Because the fact is that these were real people. And even if you read koans and you think, oh, dead people, 1,300 years ago, they were real people. And they had real emotions and real reactions. And everything that I wrote in this book was based on my personal experiences or the experiences of others, particularly those who I trained with very, very early on. These are my reactions. These are my experiences, my feelings, and every single character in this book is an aspect of me. So it's a very real book in that way. And this monk said that what was going on was wrong and that he should be head of this new cool mountain. So to keep the peace, what Pai Cheng did is he created a contest. And he worked at the edge of the difficulty between these two monks. And one of the reasons I have always loved this backstory, and I have always loved Pai Cheng, is because of all the Zen masters that I'm aware of, that I've studied. Pai Cheng was the one who was the best at following that thin razor's edge of difficulty. So what he did is he gathered his assembly around him and he put a water jug in the middle of the circle. Now this is a very ordinary item. There is nothing special about a water jug. It was part of the monks' gear. They, when they traveled away from the monastery, there was never any water. So they had to carry it with them. So they were very, very familiar with this, and it was something that they used every day. All right, so taking another step back, take a look at what has Pai Cheng done. He's taken a very common object, and he's obviously put to question, what is the nature of this object? And here is where, we can really get a lot of great access. What is the nature of this object? Another way of saying it is, what is your true relationship with anything and everything beyond its name or its label? Where is that place, that intersection that lives the truth of the concept of the thing and the livingness of the thing? And I'll tell you that my Dharma name, Isshin, actually is the space that is created by the intersection of those two arrows meeting in midair that we chant, if you were to ever chant the identity of relative and absolute. It's like two arrows meeting in midair, and that very, very hair-thin space between those two arrows is the space where Pai Cheng is creating this challenge. It also means Isshin. Okay, it's a big hint, because this is where you can go to live into the livingness of the thing itself. So don't call it a water jug. So the head monk stepped into the middle of the circle and he said, you can't call it a wooden clog. In other words, he's saying, you can't call something what it isn't. So then Pai Cheng offered the same opportunity to Kuei Shan, asked him for his opinion. Kuei Shan walked to the center of the circle. He looked down, he kicked the water jug over, and he walked out. And Pai Cheng laughed and said, the head monk loses. Okay, take a step back, because it's critical to realize this moment and to enter the experience of the head monk. All these decades of training, and this is where you stand with your wooden clog comment and your pride and your arrogance and your entitlement, and you've put it out in front of the entire Sangha, and your teacher has killed you off with one word: loser. So the beauty of this koan is in the challenge of our habituated responses, our need to stick to the way things are. And we see this happening around us over and over now, and I would say particularly now. Pai Chang is showing us that we have to make an effort to get beyond our habituated way of doing and seeing things. But why? Why? Well, the commentary says, though it seems Kuei Shan was well accepted as a promising student from the outset of his practice, and he was, it took him many, many years to find his bit of hot coal. In other words, in order to take on the teachings out into our cell walls, we need to keep digging and digging, because it does not happen over the course of a few days. And to move this along, Muman says, if you scrutinize what happened next, you'll see that Kuei Shan accepted the heavy and rejected the light. How? Look, by removing his sweatband, he shouldered an iron yoke. Leaving his job as cook, he accepted the iron yoke of responsibility for establishing a monastery. So Kuei Shan put himself in the neighborhood of the possibility, and he moved to Taipei. And he built a mud hut out of sticks and, I don't know, straw and stones. And he ate chestnuts and berries, and he talked to monkeys, and he talked to birds. But nobody came. 8 years, and nobody came. Nobody. So at some point he goes, geez, okay, this is not working. I'm leaving. This isn't working. So he packed up what little gear he had, and he started walking down the mountain. And as he was walking down along the path came a tiger. And the tiger grabbed him by his shirt. Hey! And Kuei Shan said, yeah, maybe this tiger is trying to tell me something. So he turned around and he went back to the hut. And sure enough, later that day, 3 monks showed up, and they started training with him, and they helped him. And over time, with imperial assistance, he built that monastery into a massive temple with over 1,500 disciples. So the key to this koan is the water jug and appreciating its livingness. It's a very ordinary item, but don't put it in a box, as if you already know what it is. You want to let the monkeys talk. You want to let the birds talk. You want to put yourself, we want to put ourselves in the true nature of training and practice. We want to challenge our courage into existence. Jeff, I'm really, really glad you're on the call. I would have said it anyway, but now I get to say it to you, because I know that you were really nervous thinking about yesterday and your benefit. I know, because you said it, but you challenged your courage into existence, and it was brilliant. You went right into the livingness of that thing itself. And, Taro had to be recovered. This is not a perfect story. This is a circular story. he had to be recovered. He had to rely on the inspiration of others until he found his own bit of hot coal where he could grow his ember into something that I tell you, I didn't know what it was going to become. And he couldn't have known, Taro could not have known what it was going to become, because we walked this journey together. And I want to tell you something about walking that journey together. For those of you who don't know, this is a true, it really is a true story, but it's based on fantasy because the animals talk, the trees communicate on the wind, there's live people in the monastery. So it's a magical story that's based on all of my history. Oh, Genon is a real person. When a priest goes through the process and the black robe is exchanged for the brown robe, that's a process called Shiho. And when a priest receives Shiho, they get a second Dharma name. So Bill's name really is Yoshin Genon Roshi. And so I couldn't use Yoshin because I felt that everyone would be too triggered by that. So I use Genon as Genon Roshi as the teacher who teaches Taro. And he is always pushing Taro into the livingness of the thing. And I just had a super great time writing it. And the reason that I wanted to share the backstory of Pai Chang particularly is because Bill has always reminded me of Pai Chang. Little and ascetic with a great capacity to deal at the cutting edge of the sword. And also the mood that whole scenario created was a very, very critical mood for me. In the book, I never tell you where this story happens, except in a forest, and it could be in Northern California, it could be in ancient Japan. Somebody thought it took place in Tibet. I don't know, I don't care. I never tell you when the story takes place. The only hint is that I do use the word monk instead of priest, and I use the word village instead of city, but it's entirely up to the reader to decide whatever is, fits best for your fantasy. And yeah, I mean, I just really wanted to share that backstory because I think it's super cool. And Taro the Zen Cat also has his own backstory, which maybe one day I'll share. But thank you very, very much. A simple Dharma talk, a great koan, and just to say one thing about koan study, if any of you are involved in the practice of koan study or have ever thought about becoming involved in the practice of koan study, what koans do and the reason that we study them, and they are very unique to Zen. So Zen training and koans, go hand in hand. Koans will create the territory within which you can have access to whatever it is that you're looking for. Okay, so thank you very much. I appreciate your kind attention. Thank you.
Jennifer,
Yeah.
I'm assuming you'll take questions and comments from the gang.
Comments, considerations.
So everybody, you unmute yourself if you have anything to ask or say, and go for it.
I would like to say thank you so much to Jennifer for as soon as I was like, oh, okay, Taro the Zen Cat, all right. I decided to check it out. I'm like 70% done, and it's beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Beautiful, and it's like really so apparent, like the love that you put into it, but it's on so many levels, like I really love like there's a care with which all of the words that you put in the story are there, that is like it just reminds me of certain aspects of training, that it's really the simplest thing ever, but it's also the most profound thing ever, like life and death, and also like gathering sticks and like preparing meals. And there's just this sense that also the animals, they are animals. Like they are animals on so many levels. Like I don't want to give anything away, but like the cats are like cats, the birds are like birds, the trees are like trees, the people are like people, but they're also not. And they're also in relation to us, which is true. You know, we're in relation to each other. And I think it's such a gift that you created, and I hope that other people are really able to read it, because it's beautiful. And I thank you so much for your work, and I'm so glad that I got to read it.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. And
Yeah.
I'll tell you a little thing. So there's a section. So to talk about the reality of my own experiences as they're put into the book, this is a little bit of a backstory here. There's a section where Genon Roshi does an animal blessing. It's traditional. He does it, and that was actually taken right out of Roshi's liturgy book, but it's the baby blessing. So I just turned the baby blessing into an animal blessing, and that's one of the ways, you know, that the reality of my own experience became part of that story. Yeah, thank you. And I don't think anyone would know that unless I said that. So
Please, everyone, read it.
yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Hey everyone, it's Tal. I'll jump in if no one else is about to speak. Hi, I have been listening like through the farmer's market, through my Mother's Day prep. I've been didn't want to miss this, so I'm just able to join on camera now. Jennifer, I finished the book, and so many things I want to say, but thank you for reminding, for me, what was so beautiful about it was all of the intricacies of ceremony and all of the things you reminded me of in the practice that, you know, in my journey so far. So even the small details like scraping the oryoki bowls and just little nuances of the practice and the ritual.
You're on.
Am I on? Okay, sorry. So I just wanted to just appreciate, and of course, you know, Yoshin and the being rung out of the room with the bell, get out of here, you know, all those like little details. I mean, I knew exactly where you were going with all that. And I think Dan just mentioned Shira mentioned he has the bell now. And he showed me the bell the other day. I'm like, oh, I know that bell. So I just appreciated it. For me, it was the fine moments, the little nuances of practice and the ritual. And I know that we are all hoping that one day, you know, post quarantine, that, you know, we can get back to the rigors of training and, you know, all of those beautiful rituals. But thank you for, like, you really reconnected me. I shared this with Shiro in an interview the other day. You actually jump-started, sort of reconnected me with my practice. So sorry, that was winded, but thank you.
Thank you, Tal. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's great.
Jennifer, Isshin, I just love this book, and I want to say, you know, I've known you for a long time, and you know, just the one of the wonders of being part of a sangha is the opportunity to get to know somebody in surprising, wonderful, subtle ways. And you know, of course, you and I have traveled to Africa together a couple of times and spent that kind of time together. But just, it's so lovely to see you come out in this way. It's just so beautiful.
Oh, thank you. It was a lot of fun.
I'm also really delighted in how the story is very much like, you know, when you're doing koan study and then you're living your life, how there's a relativity and there's kind of a magical thing. You think, oh, well, that's just happening for me. But actually, it's really the nature of koans. And it's why it's so important to have that in your practice if this is a practice that you choose. So there's that, and then there's the fact that this book has that nature, that element to it is pretty magical. And I also really love that it gives life and breath and that level of really grounded reality of nature, and how nature is always speaking to us and always helping us in our travels and always showing us the way and always really part of everything. And that's so beautifully blended in here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. Yeah. There's probably some good hints along the way too of how you can weave your way through koans, because, right? Yeah. He works on 2 koans with Denon.
Yeah.
I was working on one of the same ones.
Well, it could be useful. Yeah, I would have Dokusan with Bill in his living room, and I would embody Taro, and he would be, Genon Roshi. And as I said, I would always say, well, he would say, well, what would a cat do? And I would say, well, what would a Roshi say? And those dialogues between the 2 of us were recorded, and they became part of the book. So there's true authenticity. There's oh, it's oxymoron, but there's authenticity in the book in terms of the interchanges between Taro and Genon Roshi. They were real. They were actually real dialogues. So
There's a value of
I think
taking,
that was a good. Huh?
that's a really good value for taking notes throughout your practice.
Yeah.
Jennifer, I just want to add that I've just barely started reading the book and I'm already delighted. Like I'm just delighted by it. And not only just by the book and how it's written, but I feel like I've kind of been with you through the process. Like I remember 1 year ago, you were like, I am going to publish this book and it's going to be about a Zen cat named Taro. And I remember those conversations, and it's so beautiful and inspiring to see you say that. And then 1 year later, here it is, bestseller, and like delighting everyone. So I'm just proud of you and inspired by you. And I just want to say thank you so much for sharing it's such a special book, because the Zen experience is such a special experience. And I feel like you're truly capturing it in the book. And that's not an easy thing to do. And I think that all practitioners, on behalf of all Zen practitioners, I want to thank you for sharing that experience with the world.
Thank you. I had a writing coach and also a writing group that I was involved in. And my writing group really kept me grounded in a particular way, because they would always say, well, what does that mean? Well, I don't understand that. I mean, why are you using these Zen terms? I don't get it. And so they really helped kind of shave off that tendency to want to just go down the Zen track and, kind of confuse your audience. And yeah, they were amazing in that regard. What do you mean? I don't understand. And then it was my writing coach who said, oh, well, one of the ways that you can explain is through dialogue. So Taro and the birds can talk, and you can explain anything you want in that dialogue. So yeah, it was a completely new learning experience. It was just amazing. Thanks. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you.
Jennifer, it's John Aharoni. How are you?
Good, John.
My copy doesn't show up until Monday. I ordered it last week, but I have to say I was fired up to read this before, and you just poured gasoline on my ember. So it's good to see you, and love the hair, because I know it's been about 10 years since I've seen you or something, but
Yeah.
I'm so excited. Thank you.
And I have to give you a hint, John. It's not a children's book.
Oh, I was just thinking I'd read it to the little guy, but I guess not.
How old is he?
He's 7, she's 10.
No, it's not. You'll see, right? You'll see right away. It's really not a children's book. Yeah.
Oh, that's okay.
It's for big kids.
We'll
It's for big kids like you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good to see you, John. Thank you. Thank you.
You too.
So how are we doing? You want to end on the 4 vows?
Marsha's trying to talk. I see
Okay,
Marsha's mouth
Marsh.
moving.
Gotta unmute yourself, girl.
Oh no, she turned off her video.
Oh, went away entirely. Oh my God.
No.
I can turn her on. Hang
There
on.
she is.
It's just too much for my eyes. I can't read all of those little words there. I thought I was just clicking on a red thing. Have I got it or not?
Hey, Mark, well, we can hear you.
But we lost your video.
Here it is. Start my video. Okay.
We hear you. Oh, there you are.
I am. Okay. And I thought it was a children's book too when I heard you talking about it about a year ago.
Yeah.
I was reading Murakami, and then I stopped and started reading your book because I thought, well, before you talk, I ought to hear the book. It was a trip down memory lane. It was like the most wonderful experience. It was as if I had lived the experience that you were writing about. It was amazing, and it was triggering, and it was wonderful, and I so appreciate that you wrote this book.
You did live that experience, Marsh. You were part of it. Yeah.
I felt it. It was just wonderful. It was as if I had been right inside there, right there. So thank you. Thank
you guys, all of you. Wonderful. Oh my God. Thank you so much.
And I know you're I feel where you're coming from when you say it's not a children's book, but it's also so accessible that I wouldn't even I wouldn't put myself in that box that it's not, because I really feel like it's so accessible for any age. It's just a beautiful story, and I think what you would get from it if you read it and you're 10, you would still get so much from it. I mean, you have so many funny moments in the book that I'm not gonna give anything away, but just Ratsutsu is just like hilarious in ways that I know that my daughter would resonate with, and that if she read it 10 years from now, she will resonate with it on a different level. So before you say it's not a this or it's not a that, just let it be what it is, because I think people will be able to get it at different times in their life.
Well, you're right, and I appreciate that, because I should probably pay attention to what I just said, which is not put anything in a box and to just let it live. You're right, because you know what? It is like spaghetti. If it sticks, it sticks. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It doesn't matter. Just the act of throwing it up on the wall. So you're right. Thank you for that reminder. See how fast this stuff goes?
You cannot call it a wooden sandal, right, Jennifer?
It's not a wooden clog. Yeah.
Wooden sandal, wooden clog.
Thank you for that. Yeah, that's true. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, so I read the first page and it's great.
Okay.
Now that I have time to actually read it, I definitely will. I'm really looking forward to it, especially after your talk. I also just wanted to say a huge thank you to all of you who participated in the concert last night. I meant to say a heartfelt thank you to Dan and the Prajna Heart Zen Center, and I had it written down, and then I forgot. If it makes you feel any better, I also forgot to thank my parents. But I'll just say it here. I thank you guys so much for your support. I know a lot of the donations that did go to the First Responders Children's Fund came from this community, because there was a certain amount that was raised before I even started, and the only publicity that we had was through you. So thank you to all of you for all your support, and I really appreciate it. We made a difference, so it's awesome.
Good job, Jeff. Amazing.
Yeah, I thought thank you. Yeah, and I thought it's not the advertising, that's the wrong word, but the way that you did that, Dan, was really, really great and very efficient, just really, really good. It was beautiful, actually, and some of those pictures of you, Jeff, were pretty good.
Thanks. Yeah, that was fun. We did a downtown socially distanced photo shoot.
Yeah, it was great. So
I don't know if any of you noticed, but the shot of Jeff on the bridge, Lori and I recognized it instantly, was the 7th Street Bridge. 7th Street, just right around the corner from where we meet as a Sangha when we can meet as a Sangha. So lots of little bits of serendipity. And I'd actually like to kind of point that out. A fair number of us on the call today have long history with Jennifer. Some of us have a much shorter history or very little history with Jennifer. And the same goes in reverse for Anyo, who was on the call earlier, where some of the newer members of Prajna Heart Zen Center actually have had a deep relationship with Anyo and deep experience with Anyo up at Zen Mountain Center, whereas some of the legacy folks here are like, who's Anyo, right? So there's all these funny connections. Jennifer, the koan you picked, Isshin Kicks Over the Water Jug. I know the Japanese names, not the Chinese names. Is one of my favorites.
Oh, interesting, yeah.
And just for background, you all should know that Jennifer is the one who trained me to be Tenzo.
Oh, I guess that's right. Yeah.
Right. So when I took the role of Tenzo, I was trained by Jennifer. So there's that connection too. And then even in reading the book, I think all of us that have started reading it or reading it are saying, wow, I was there, I lived that, or I see myself in that. I predict that people that weren't part of Santa Monica Zen Center or have just started koan study, and Philip, you've already spoken to this, will feel the same way, because these truths, these facts of Zen transcend story. I mean, it's a beautiful story and it transcends story. It's just what is so, like I'm reading it and go, is she writing about me? And I know that no and yes, right? But that's true for all of this. And that's one of the beautiful things about the practice. And that's why what Lori said about the koans is so important too. And as you go through koans, it's uncanny, and everybody can just shout it out if you want, but you'll be working on a koan and all of a sudden you go, wait a minute, that's exactly where I am in my life right now. And yet this is somehow random that I just happen to be on koan 68 of the Dharmakaya koan sheet from Prajna Heart Zen Center. And yet somehow it's like exactly that ember that you've been looking for, or that slap on the side of the head that you needed. And it's one of the things that keeps me going in the practice. It's just this wondrous universality of these stories and tales and teachings from starting 2,700 years ago.
Yeah, and that, I agree. And that's one of the reasons that it's important to remember that these were real people during real times with real emotions, real histories, real reactions. They were absolutely real. Just as real as you and I are today. So, yeah, thank you. And these koans, for those of you who may not know, they were dialogues between master and student. They were dialogues. So, and that's how they were recorded as dialogues. Koan means case study. They were case studies between master and student. And we weave them into pragmatic aspects of ourselves today, so that they don't show up like dead words, with dead people. They show up, living in your life and my life. Yeah. So that's true, Dan. Wherever you are, there you are. Or however that goes, I don't know. Yeah.
Tennessee, Chalet, Ken, any questions or thoughts?
Okay. 4 vows?
Yeah, I think we can ring out then. Going, gong.
Okay, let's do it.